Right, so let's carry on with this application. So we've created all the layout files. So what we want to do next is to create a custom class. So I'm going to create, I'll go right click and say new Java class, and we're going to call this the car class. So we will see on the information that we see here, you can see that we've got a make, we've got a model, we've got the owner, and then we've got the owner's telephone number. So let's just create the fields here for this custom class, and we'll have private string the make of the vehicle. I'm going to have private string the model, and then we'll have private string owner name, and we'll also have private string owner telephone number. Okay, so these are all the fields that you need, and for the rest you just generate. So you're going to right click and say generate. We want the constructor there. Select all of them, say OK. And we also want the getters and the setters. So we're going to right click generate getters and setters, although maybe you will not use the setters, but normally we'll take both. So we're going to take the getters and the setters there, and then you've got getters and setters for every field that we have there. Right, so that's step number 1 to create your recycler view. So now the next step will be to create a custom layout file. So I'm going to close down some of these. Go open up your layout file, and you want to go and create a new one. So you're going to, or your layout folder, open up your layout folder, right click, say new, and you're going to say layout resource file. Now the name for this file, I'm going to call it row underscore layout. Remember, your file name should be all lowercase, and I'm going to have this as a linear layout and say OK. Right, now for this layout I will need the card view. So if you go to containers, you'll get the card view there. So just click on that download button and say OK again, and that will sync to your Gradle build file and add that libraries to our application. Right, so if you have a look at your build.gradle file, you can see that these two lines is what we need for this project, the recycler view and the card view. So if that wasn't generated for you automatically, just go and type these two. And just remember that your app compat library there, the version there, must be the same for your recycler view and your card view. Right, so let's go to the row layout now. Right, so for this row layout, I'm going to start there inside of the linear layout. That is vertical. I'm going to start with the card view there. So choose your card view. The width should match the parent and the height should wrap the content. Right, so now for this card view, we just need a namespace declaration. So I'm going to take this one. Actually, let's just go to the activity main quickly. There's one that says res auto at the end, this one. So I'm going to take this namespace declaration inside of activity main that says res auto at the end. So we're going to take that one. And instead of saying app there, we're going to use card underscore view. Right, so that's the namespace declaration that we'll need so that we have access to all of these card view properties. Okay, so I'm going to set the background color there as, let's use the card view light background. I'm going to set the corner radius to 5 dp. And I'm going to set the card elevation to 5 dp. And let's see what we've got here. We're going to set the use compat padding to false, and we'll add our own margin there of a 5 dp. Right, so that is our card view, and on the screen you won't see anything because your card view needs to have something in it to display it. It's a container. And you also see there's a warning that it cannot render a card view style, but don't worry about that. We'll in any case see it on the screen, so that's not a problem to worry about. Right, so now what I want to do is to get the layout to look like this. So you can see that we will have a horizontal linear layout with the picture first, and then a vertical linear layout inside of that horizontal linear layout. We'll have the vertical one with the two text views. So let's see if we can do that quickly. Right, so we'll start with a linear layout that is horizontal inside of the card view. Right, so there's your linear layout that is horizontal, and on that linear layout that's horizontal, I want to drag in firstly the picture. So it's an image view. Go to project, and let's just take the first picture there for the Volkswagen. Right, and now for this picture, let's make the picture a bit smaller. let's make it 50 by 50. Right, that should be fine. Let's just zoom in a bit. So you can see now your card view there. Right, so we've got the picture, and now next to the picture we want to have, let's go to layouts again, and we want to have a vertical linear layout. So make sure, look at your indentation, it must be exactly where mine is at. Okay, so we have a linear layout that's vertical, and inside of that linear layout that's vertical, I'm going to drag in 2 text views. Now let's go into the text part quickly, and for this linear layout, I'm going to remove the weights there. So this weight and the weight there. So on the image view as well as this linear layout. And then we can move it with the margins. Right, so now what I want to do is for this picture, let's have a layout margin at the top of 5, on the left 5, and at the bottom also 5. Okay, so that there's some space inside of the card view. Right, now for this linear layout that's vertical, let's also just move that linear layout, let's say a left margin of, let's make it 5, just to move it up a bit. For this text view, I'm going to set, maybe before we set the margins, let's make this style bold. And I think it's a bit bigger than the other one, so it's normally 14, so let's make it 16 there. Right, that should be fine. Now let's move that text view from the top a bit. So top, let's give it a 5 margin there, maybe a 7. Right, that should be fine. Now let's move it a bit down a bit. Let's just go to, let's try 10. Yeah, I think 10 should be fine. Right now, because we want to change everything on this layout, let's just have this as IV make again. This one will be TV. So let me just have a look at this again. That will be the make, this one will be the model, and that will be the owner. So let's just call this one TV model, and this one we'll have as TV owner. Right, so now everything on this layout file is created for us. Or we created everything now, and we can now go to the adapter. So let's go into our Java folder. We're going to right click, you're going to say new Java class, and I'm going to call this one car adapter, and say OK. Right, now for your car adapter, we need to have a few things here. So firstly, we're going to say extends Recyclerview, and now you remember the Recyclerview is now imported, so now we can get a hold of it, and we're going to say .adapter there. Now on this, Alt Enter and say implement methods, and you'll need to get all of those methods. Now right at the top, we'll have an array list that will represent every item in the list view or in the recycler view. So it's going to be of type car, and let's call it cars. Then we also need the constructor here. So we're going to say car adapter. And for this, we're going to accept a context. And you remember this is just to get hold of the activity that is using this. And then as part of the context also, or part of the constructor, we also need a list. So I'm going to say array list of type car, and let's call it list. Right, so for now, all we want to do is to just say cars equals the list. So our array list there will be linked to the one that will be passed in. Right, and then the next thing is to go and create an inner class here. So you'll see that we return here recyclerview.viewHolder. So we want to override this viewholder. So I'm going to create my own class called viewholder, and we're going to say extends this recyclerview.viewholder. Right, so this is the class then. If you click on the error, Alt Enter, create the constructor, matching super. Now, if you remember from the previous videos, here we basically declare everything that we need in our row layout. So we'll need this one, IV make. So let's start with that one. So it's going to be an image view. I'm going to call it IV make. We will also have two text views. So one is called TV model and the other one TV owner. So let's just say text view there, TV make, and TV owner. Right, and then we'll see when we do the onCreate view holder, where we send a view to this view holder, that view will ultimately be item view. So we're going to go to initially define these, we're going to say equals item view dot find the view by its ID, and the ID will be ivmake. Right, and then also the same for tvmake equals the item view dot find the view by its ID. Come on. r.id.tvmake. Sorry, we've already got we've got ivmake and tvmake. Let me just go back there. Something's not right here. So this one is TV model and TV owner. So it's TV model there, sorry. So this one must become TV model. And then we have TV model here as well. Right, and then TV owner equals item view dot find the view by its ID, r.id.tv owner. Right, so there's something wrong again. Let me just see. This one is TV owner. So if this happens, we can just go to the build menu at the top and just clean your project. Now let's go back to the adapter and see if we can pick up TV owner there. Yes. Right, so if this happens where you cannot pick up an ID, just go to your build menu at the top and then just click on clean project. Okay, so I've got ivmake, we've got TV model, and we've got TV owner there. Right, so remember here we just set them up and we get a link to them. In the onCreate view holder, we create the view, and on the onBind view holder is where we set the items. Okay, so we've got a link to all of them, and then we want these items clickable. So I'm going to have set onClick listener, and we're going to say new onClick listener. So we'll get back to this onClick listener later on. Now let's go into the next method. So before we do that, we want to make this now our view holder. So right at the top there, we're going to have a view holder type there, and it will be of our car adapter. And now if you go down, you'll have problems here because now we've overwritten this recycler view holder. So we need to use our own view holder here, which is part of the car adapter class. So it's going to be car adapter.viewholder, and the same here, it must be car adapter.viewholder. Right. So now inside of our onCreate view holder, we will create a new view that will link to this row layout. So how do we do that? We use the layout inflator dot from, and we want to get this view group and the context of that view group. So it's going to be view group dot get context. Make sure you put your cursor at the end, and we call the inflate method. Now what do we want to inflate? It's going to be r.layout dot, in this case it's called row layout. Second argument your view group again, and your third argument just the false value there. Do not attach to the root. And then when we return now, you can see the return type is car adapter.viewholder, which means we want to return an object of this class. So you can see the constructor there accepts a view. So we're going to say new view holder, which is the one from the car adapter, and we're going to pass in this view. So when passing in this view, we're basically passing in the row layout. So when we say there, this view then passed into it, this is the row layout. So on the row layout, find the view by its ID, ivmake, TV model, and TV owner, and we get a connection to it. Right, so now in the onBind view holder is where we set all of the components now. So we're going to start with this view holder that was passed in. That is ultimately this one, which we returned. So that view holder there. On that view holder, we've got item view, and we've got these three components. Okay, so I'm going to start with the item view there. So I'm going to say dot item view. So that is basically the whole layout that we want to have clickable. So on that whole layout, we're going to set a tag, and the tag will be the object that you're currently with. So we're going to go to our cars array list dot get, and the index where we are should be the I. So remember that the onBind view holder runs now for every element that you have in this cars array list that was passed in. So remember that your item count there will be cars dot size. So it's going to look at your cars dot size to run this onBind view holder that amount of times. And every time it runs, we are at the index value of I. So if I've got 5 cars in my cars array list, then this onBind view holder will run for 5 times for every one of those car objects. So what we're doing here essentially is to saying this is the tag, this is the object that we're currently with. Right, then we go to the view holder again, and now we can get access to these IVMake, TV model, and TV owner. So now for the text views, it's easy because it's just going to set, we're just going to set the values there. So let's start with the owner, and we're going to set some text to that owner, and the owner will be cars.getI again, getting that same object, .get owner name, and that's the owner's name. And we're going to go to view holder again, .tv model, .set text. Again, we're going to go to cars, .get that index, .get, in this case, the model. Now for the picture there, which is the image view on this row layout, it depends on what is the make for that specific vehicle. So let's go and do a few if statements there. So we're going to say if cars.getI, that gets you the object, .get, and now we want to look at the make for this specific vehicle. So if the make equals, so let's say we're going to create objects, we will have Volkswagen, which is the one picture there. So if you look at your pictures quickly, we've got a Volkswagen, Nissan, and Mercedes. So we're going to test for all 3 of those. So if it's a Volkswagen, then we're going to go to view holder, the same as we did here. There's the image view, IVMake, set image resource. And we're going to go to r.drawable, and we want to show this picture of the Volkswagen. Now the else part, I'm just going to copy this. So the else if there, if it's not a Volkswagen, but if it is, let's say it's a Nissan, then we want to show the picture of that specific vehicle. And then the last one is a Mercedes. So if I just say else there, I know that it will then go to a Mercedes, unless you want to have some other cars there as well. But in our example, we only use these 3. So let's change that picture then to the Mercedes. Right, so that should be it. This should work now. Okay, so we've got right at the top our array list. There's a list that was passed in with the adapter constructor. We set that list to the cars array list. We created our own view holder there, which will make connections to IVMake, TV model, and TV owner on that layout. Here we create the link to the view called r.layout.rowlayout, and we return that as a new view holder to get connection to all of the components on row layout. Then the onBind view holder will run the amount of times that you indicate here, which is the number of objects that we currently have in our array list. And every time it runs, we get the index value. We get hold of the item view and set the tag to which object we're currently at. We set the text to TV owner and TV model, and depending on what the make of the vehicle is, we set the appropriate picture. Right, so now the next part that we need to do, if we quickly have a look at fragment list, you remember that we named it list. So let's go now to list frag, and this is where we actually set up this recycler view now. So inside of your list frag, we're going to declare a recycler view at the top, which we're just going to call recycler view, which will ultimately link to this one that's called list. Right, let's go back. Then the next thing we'll need is recycler view dot adapter, and let's call it my adapter. And this one will refer to this car adapter that we just created. Then also we need to have a layout manager, and let's call it layout manager. You remember from previous videos, it's either a linear layout manager or it could be a grid layout manager. Right, so then we also need to have a view, and I'll get to that view now. So recycler view, my adapter, layout manager, and then a custom view, or just a view. So let's do the view quickly. What we want to do, instead of just returning this inflate, we first want to get hold of it. So we're going to say, already declared it at the top, so we're going to say view equals get hold of this whole thing, cut it and paste it there, and this is what we'll return. So actually we didn't change this method, we just get a hold of a fragment list, which is this layout file. So if we have a link to this layout file, we can get a hold of this recycler view. And that's exactly what we want. Right, so now the next method that we'll need here, so you're going to go to right-click, generate, override methods, and you're going to search for the onActivity created method. Right, so in this method, we want to set up now the recycler view. So I'm going to say recycler view equals. Now, instead of just saying find the view by its ID, we refer to this view because view is referring to fragment list, which has got this recycler view called list on it. Okay, so let's go back. So we're going to say dot find the view by its ID, r.id dot, we called it list. So now we've got a link to that recycler view. To that recycler view, we're going to set the has fixed size to true, just to have better performance there. Let's set up the layout manager quickly, and the layout manager will be a new linear layout manager. And normally in an activity, you will pass in the this keyword there. But now we're going to pass in this.get activity as the context. Then to the recycler view, we're going to set the layout manager to this layout manager. And now we can start creating the adapter. But in order for us to create the adapter, you'll see that we need to pass in a context, which is easy, but the list, which we do not have. So I'm going to create this again in the application class. So you're going to right click on your package, go to new Java class, and call it application class. Well, you can call it anything, just don't call it application because that's the class we're going to extend from. So you can call this anything. You can call it car application if you want it. So I'm going to call this application class, and this class will extends application. So if you remember from previous videos, the idea behind this application class is that it's the very first thing that runs when your application runs, and also the very last thing that exits when your application exits. So we want to create here, just go to generate, override methods, and we want to have the onCreate method there. So I'm going to create an array list at the top. So I'm going to have it public and static, so it belongs to the class, and let's call it array list. Or the type is array list of type car, and let's call it cars as well. Right, and then we initialize it here, so we're going to say cars equals new array list. And now we can start adding. So remember, you do not need to specify the type there, but if it's better to read, then you can specify it. Right, so I'm just going to add a few cars there. So there you can see there's the cars. You can quickly type them. So it's going to be new car. So car is going to our car class there, which accepts a make, a model, an owner name, and an owner telephone number. So you see the make, the model, the owner name, and the owner telephone number. Right, so just make sure that you quickly add a few cars there, and make sure that it's only Volkswagen, Mercedes, Nissan, how we tested for it there. So make sure you spell it also the same. So you can quickly type a few cars that you want to add to your list there. Right, so there's the cars, and now we are set up for the cars array list. But now this class is not yet my application class. So let's go to the manifest. You're going to add the name property there under the application tag, and you can see it automatically picks up your application class. So just select it there, and now your application class became your application class. Right, so now this thing will run right at the start and exit only at the end. I'm going to close down my application class now, and this one, and the main activity. Okay, let's also, we can leave the rest open. So now in our list frag, we now have that array list that we can pass in. So I can go and create my adapter. So we already declared my adapter at the top, and we're going to say my adapter equals new car adapter. So you'll remember there's car adapter. What do we need to pass in? We need to pass in a context and that list. All right, so now the context is the same as what we did here for this .get activity. So we're going to say this .get activity. So ultimately we're passing in the main activity. And then the second argument is now the list. So that is in my application class .cars. That is the list that we want to pass in. Right, and then to the recycler view, we're going to set the adapter as my adapter. So let's just run this quickly and see how it displays now. Right, so this is still our previous application. So let's just see if this one runs. we should see something similar now here. Right, let's see how it runs. Okay, so there we can see there's the picture, Polo, Chuck Norris, and so forth. So my recycler view is now fine, although I see a lot of open space there. So the reason behind this now that we have is because of the following. Go to your row layout, and you're going to choose your linear layout that's vertical. That one is fine. This one is fine. Let's go to the card view. That one is also fine. But your vertical linear layout right at the top, you can see spans the whole screen. So let's just make the height there also wrap the content. And then let's run this again. Right, so there we go now. Now our recycler view is showing as it should. Okay, so now the next part is to figure out what to do in this part. To now have a click event there and show the information and so forth. So this is the next part that we'll do. So I'm going to stop this video now. This was then the video just for the recycler view to show the information correctly on the recycler view. See you in the next one.